I walked over to the that
Okay.
extra.
Oh, today is August 19th, and 2020, and we're here with Tom and Barbara. I'm Kevin, and today's topic is visits to Japan, family visits to Japan. And the first one, of course, was with the visit of Dan and Mom and Tom to Japan for my wedding, which was 30, 31 years ago? Yeah, that was 31 years ago. Anyway, so they came over, and sadly we couldn't get everybody like Ginger and Marie to come over. Dan had some free time because he's his own businessman. I think the girls had to work, so they couldn't come over. And then we went on to Bali after for the honeymoon. So, can you tell us a little bit about coming over? What from your perspective?
Well, we had been retired for 2 years. I retired early when I was 57, and Marilyn did too. And we went all around the United States in a motorhome, and we were halfway around when Kevin talked to him on the phone, and he said he was going to get married, and would we come to the wedding? Well, sure we would. And so we proceeded to fly over with Dan. Dan was the best man, and he came. The three of us flew to Tokyo for the wedding, and that was our first time for all three of us that we'd been in Japan. Kevin had been there for some time, certainly long enough to meet Maki and get married. And Maki's name was Mizuno, and her parents were at the wedding. And so we got to meet them. And they entertained us the first night in Japan. And Maki's mother cooked a wonderful dinner for us. And it seemed like we were, and we ate it all in Japanese style. And we couldn't, of course, speak Japanese, but Maki and Kevin translated for us, and we could talk back and forth with them as our translators. That in itself, that was in Nagoya, where Maki grew up. And Nagoya is a train ride away from Tokyo, where they got married. So we were all in Tokyo and at the Lutheran church. Maki and Kevin weren't Lutheran, but they got married in a Lutheran church because it was cheaper than a Japanese wedding, which cost like 10 times more than they paid for theirs. And the day of their wedding, 6 other couples got married at the Lutheran church. So I'm sure that each time he charged them $1,000, and that maintained him in the church for another.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So there it was. There's all the wedding pictures. And
Right.
and Dan and Kevin were probably the tallest people there. And the three of us, me too, all had red hair. We must be so quite a sight. But the Japanese never point fingers. Look at that, 3 tall redheads at once. They would never do anything like that.
Oh, look at that.
Look at that.
Oh.
That's really nice. So
Let's see and then we had an after party afterwards.
yes, at an after party, and I remember your 2 niece and nephew were playing pool, and
Yes.
in the pool room at the reception, and they were just little kids. So you had this niece and nephew now are grown and married, and well, this you hadn't been in Japan very long. This was 89.
89. I went over in 84, so I'd been there 5 years.
5 years. In that 5 years, you were able to get this teaching job at Showa University.
There's the pool table.
There they are. Yeah,
There's
they were
there
kind
we've
of
got.
youngest ones there.
Yeah.
We had been in Tennessee when Kelly Treadwell was born, our granddaughter. So we were there for the birth in our motorhome as part and beginning of our trip in retirement. So I always know how old Kelly is. She's as old as I've been retired, like what, 33 years now.
Then there was a honeymoon.
Yes.
Yeah, but that was in Bali, so let's not talk about that until another time.
Okay. Right.
Go on and stick to Japan. And you came back again in 2008, which was like 20 years later.
Yeah.
You want to lead into that and give some background on the trip?
You mean this second trip to?
Yeah.
Okay, you're going to cut this into two. All right. The second trip to Japan was because I was alone, a widower. Marilyn had died, and I didn't know what to do with myself. I was walking around the house all by myself, bumping into the walls, I think. And I did go to the church where Marilyn's funeral was held. And everybody was at the funeral except Kevin, because he was busy with his father-in-law was dying at the same time in Japan, in Nagoya. And so he was helping Maki and getting her down to Nagoya and so on for that. And it wasn't at his mother's funeral. So we said, that's fine. You can send an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper with some message on it that you want the people to hear at the funeral. And so each of you 4 kids, and Dan read Kevin's, had something to say about their mother at the funeral. It was a really nice funeral. And it was presided over by a friend who was a minister in the church, and a friend from Kiwanis, who had been a president of Kiwanis. And I asked, Paul, will you conduct a funeral? And he said, sure he would. So that was how I didn't, I know, I got to Japan by talking to Kevin on by emails, and he was going to come over when they scattered the ashes of his mother at Maria's Pass near Breckenridge, which was her request. And we all went up there to Maria's, and Kevin could come over for that scattering of the ashes. And then, when he left, went back to Japan, I was really all alone there. And he called and said, how was I doing? I said, not so good. He said, why don't you come to Japan? I'll take you around Japan and give you a tour. And I said, great, I guess. Yeah, I don't have anything holding me here. I hadn't made any relationship really with Barbara. And so I just left and didn't even tell Barbara. We weren't that close that I felt a need to tell Barbara where I was going. And so she wondered what happened to Tom. He disappeared all of a sudden. So I arrived in Japan, and it was a wonderful time all by myself there with your family. And I could see your house. It was a house that you had rented for several years, and your daughters were both born there, not in the house, but I mean, while you were in that house. Mm-hmm. And you stayed there for several years. And then I guess the lease ran out, and you were forced to buy a house. I've never been in your new home. Barbara went over and went with you to Myanmar and when I stayed back home here, and Barbara has been in your new house, but I've never been in the new one. I'm talking about the old one. You just had a little cubby thing that would fit that little car that your father-in-law gave you. And so that was the car we went in. I went on the trip, and you had a tape recorder in the car, and we listened to tapes that told the story of the Byzantine Empire. Now, I've read a lot of history, but I've never read anything about the Byzantine Empire. And it was fascinating. We had these episodes, much like these are, telling us about the Byzantine Empire as we drive from place to place in Japan. And I remember those very well, but I don't remember the names of the places we
Those
went
were
to.
those were done by Lars Bronwith. He's a history professor, and that's when podcasting was brand new. And so this idea of recording stuff and making it available over the internet, and then I was able to download it to a player and then plug the player into the speakers in the car. That was all kind of new stuff then. We also listened to another podcast called Political Gab Fest. And that was commentary on the week's politics. And that was, I've been listening to that now since then, for more than 10 years, and really got to know John Dickerson and David, I can't remember his last name. And there's a woman that works at the New York Times now, Emily,
Dickens.
What's the name of it, Kevin? What's the name of the podcast?
It's a Slate Magazine's Political Gab Fest.
Oh,
And they do, it's wonderful. I've been listening, and the three of them really worked well together. Make great commentary. But this picture here is Tom, and we're in the little car, and people would comment about how two big guys in such a little car were pretty amazing. And that little car has 600cc engine, and it has 12-inch wheels, and has reduced tolls, makes about 50 miles to the gallon, is a conventional car. It's just regular. And it's called a K car. It's a special class designed to be a little bit cheaper, mostly for farmers, so that they could have little trucks to, go out to the field and bring back food and stuff, and take out tools. But then they were adapted for cars in Japan, and they're very popular here because they're so cheap. Insurance is cheaper, tolls are cheaper, and gas, of course, is a lot cheaper at 50 miles a gallon. This is up in Nikko, which is north of Tokyo, and a very tourist area with lots of temples. We got stuck. Actually, the snow, and this is in March, the snow was so deep that we had to go around. The road that we wanted to go on was not available because it was too cold. Here's another one. This is at the ski area where it was blocked off. From there, we couldn't get over that mountain, and Nikko is just on the other side of the mountain there. I don't think I have any pictures of Nikko. Let's see. Oh, this is at the lake near there.
Yes. And things like talking about the housing, you would explain to me how people lived in these like fishing towns. A lot of fishing in Japan. They eat a lot of fish. So they're little fishing boats belong to one person, and they go out and catch fish to sell in the fish market. We ate in restaurants, of course, the whole time. But one time when we were at home, you said we ought to go out to eat. And oh yeah, let's go out to eat. So you said we can't all fit in the car because there were 4 of you and I would make 5 people who would not fit in that little car. So we have to go on the train. You were kind of apologetic. Oh no, that was a great, thrill to go to the restaurant on a train. And you did that all the time. I mean, when you owned a car, you'd lived there for 5 years. You didn't even have a car. So you always went on the train everywhere. So it was great. And little kids would jump on the train, kindergarten age, and all by themselves. They knew how to do it. And if there was any problem, the crowd of people would protect them and show them. And, if they got hurt or got lost, there was no danger. The people there would take care of them, make sure they got where they're supposed to go. So even little kids went to school on the train.
How old were your girls then, Kevin?
Oh, hmm?
Henri and Julia?
Yeah, here's a picture of Henri and Julia when they were there.
Yeah,
I think maybe Julia might have been first year of college, or
Oh,
yeah, and Henri was in
yeah,
high school.
didn't you say one of the girls gave you their bed?
yeah, right. Henri, she had a little tiny bedroom down in the lower level of the house, and they gave that to me, and she slept on the floor in front of the TV set
Uh-huh.
in the
Yeah,
living room.
common practice. And this is the kids going out at the local park. It was,
Yeah, that's during the cherry blossom blooming,
right.
and we I saw the cherry blossoms. I was there in April, and it was beautiful. Um,
And this is downtown Tokyo. They would block off the main street downtown Ginza, it was called. And they don't do that anymore, actually. But in those days they did. Or actually, I'm not sure. This might be Akihabara. Yeah, this is Akihabara with the electronics and now cosplay. And so just traveling, touristing around Japan. Yeah, so we get to see wildlife, and this is a kind of a special cauliflower. It's more of a flower than it is cauli. And here's me. This is south of Tokyo, and it was in Izu, which is very similar. You commented that it was very similar to the Northwest, like Oregon and Washington. The coasts looked a lot very similar. And we stopped at the very tip where the black ships, Perry's black ships came in Shimoda. We went, stayed at a very fancy ryokan, which serves dinner in your room and breakfast as well. But this is the dinner, a little bit of crab and fish and pickles and vegetables, boiled things and fried things. There's all kinds of rules that you have to make the perfect kind of dinner for this kind of occasion. These pots in the middle are for the rice, and or they actually, it might be some kind of stew with the heaters in the bottom. But yeah, this is a nice thing, and the ocean there. We did have for one day a friend, Marie's husband's sister, came and visited us for one day during the trip. She happened to be over there. And oh, this is in.
Japan has so many trees, and I think of something like 80% of Japan is trees, usually on hillsides that are too steep to farm. And they've kept those forests, even a huge population per square mile, they still have a lot of forests. And then these peninsulas stick out into the ocean. And so there's water on each side and then trees in the background. And you think you were in Colorado or somewhere with wide open spaces. And it's in crowded Japan.
Yeah.
What are those structures on the lower left corner?
These this is what's called a wasabi field. A wasabi is a kind of a root that grows in stream beds. And so this is basically a stream that's been kind of cultivated so that you can grow these wasabi that looks a little bit like radishes.
Very hot,
Spicy, yes, that's right.
spicy.
And I've discovered since then that what they call wasabi in most places, in most sushi restaurants, is not really wasabi. They kind of fake it with something else because wasabi is really, really difficult to grow and it's expensive. So if you really want to get real wasabi, you got to pay a lot. But they're able to fake it pretty well for most sushi it goes well with sushi. And so this was up in the middle of this Izu Peninsula in the mountains, right near the ocean, and actually cultivated wasabi. Yeah, I think that's.
I knew that running water had to run through it as it grew. So they build these fields on the side of a hill or mountain,
Mhm.
and then they'd start the water at the top and kind of let it run through the garden. And evidently wasabi had to have running water. So it was very complicated water supply system. And you said it's very expensive because it's hard to grow.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, these are other pictures that. Yeah, so here's. Come on. Okay. Let's stop sharing there.
Can you hear me now? You were frozen out. I suppose we were frozen out from
Maybe
you.
it was, yeah.
You,
There we go.
you-
Yes, that was me.
Oh, I'm sorry to say, but I'm happy it was you.
Oh.
Because we were so afraid we were having the same problem again.
Yeah, no, that was me.
Oh,
I
I'm
was trying
sorry.
to share a picture and then it got stuck on the picture. Here's one.
that's all right. Maybe that's
Yeah.
enough for an episode, isn't it?
Right,
Oh,
yeah, probably
that's
enough
nice.
of the pictures.
That was a nice picture.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have some shirts, you know.
I need some new shirts. Yeah. Yeah, that's
Oh, that was the same shirt? Yeah.
30 years old.
Yeah, there was at least 2 of those shirts he still has.
Uh-huh.
But that's only 10 years. I mean,
Oh, it's only
at first I thought it was from the wedding, but
There's there's Maki and Julia in those days, 10 years ago.
chocolates.
I remember they played softball, and you said that Julia was so sociable, she'd rather sit on the bench and talk to the other girls. But Henri was so serious about it that she studied the game, and she got to be the captain of the team, I think, and the pitcher, and she was the champion ball player on the girls' softball team.
So there's Dad at a temple praying. This is the up at Nico. Oh, here's Nico. That's a good picture of one of the temples. This is up in the mountains. A little bit hard to get to, but only about a 2 hours drive from Tokyo. And let's see. Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's same time. John, my friend, had his wife had twins, but sadly, she
Oh, yes.
died in childbirth. So John is they're now 12 years old.
Oh, yeah?
That was all that same week. Yeah, that same time.
Yeah. That was a terrible tragedy.
Yeah.
And so they were raised by their grandparents, as I remember.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Well.
The twins lived that their mother died.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, it was a nice time to spend having you come over. We were able to talk quite a bit and listen to podcasts and do lots of things. And I think it got you a little bit out of the funky groove you were in. And you started,
Yeah.
I remember you went back and you said, I'm going to start taking care of myself. So you started doing things like going to the doctor and fixing your teeth and other things like that. And then, you got up in good enough shape to meet Barbara.
Yeah, that's right. And that was, then once I met Barbara and really met her, I mean, I had met her at the first meeting of all the new members of the church, about 20 of us. and we were both in that new member class. But I didn't, it was a slow time of getting to know her. And then once we did all kinds of things together. We had a wonderful time. We're still having a wonderful time 10 years later. Even in quarantine here with the pandemic, it's still been a wonderful time.
Yeah.
So that was a bad time in my life after Marilyn's death, but it didn't last a long time.
Yep. Okay. Well, I think that's good for today.
Okay, good.
And
Good. Now I'll be anxious to see this.
yeah.
Now you say the last one